Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt something off, something chilling behind their smile, something rehearsed in the way they say, "I'm okay"? That moment, when a person seems to be holding it all together a little too perfectly, is often the final clue, the last signal before the storm inside them breaks loose, and the tragedy is not just in their collapse, but in how many people around them never noticed. Because society trains us to value appearances over authenticity, strength over vulnerability, and smiles over the truth, but beneath that polished front lies a silent war, a slow implosion behind eyes that no longer match the words coming out of the mouth. When someone says they're fine, and they say it fast, firm, almost with too much certainty, it's not reassurance, it's desperation covered in etiquette. There's a game people play when they are on the brink. A performance, a well-rehearsed illusion of balance. It's subtle. They'll laugh at the right times, ask the right questions, and even show compassion for others just to redirect attention away from their own slow undoing. But here's the chilling part. The better they play this role, the closer they are to giving up. The final moments of pretending you're okay don't look like tears and screams. They look like routine, like answering emails, like making small talk, like showing up on time. That's the trap. They seem stable while crumbling silently. Why? Because in a world that punishes emotional transparency, survival means suppression, and suppression always comes with signs, if you know what to look for. A subtle delay in answering a simple question, a momentary blank stare in the middle of a conversation, a laugh that lingers half a second too long. These are not flaws, they are fractures in the mask. Cracks in the armor of someone who has been taught that breaking down is failure, that weakness is shame. But what if we told them that seeing through the performance isn't judgment, it's power? There is strength in perception. Not the perception others have of you, but the perception you have of others. The most powerful people in the world aren't just those who speak with authority, they are those who see with clarity. They watch how you say things, not just what you say. They track your silences more than your speeches. They know that when someone goes silent in the middle of a sentence, that pause isn't empty. It's filled with pain trying not to be noticed. They understand that control in its most extreme form is a warning, not a virtue. Those who pretend the longest are often those who have had no choice. They were told from a young age to be strong, be quiet, be composed, and so they learn to internalize collapse. But what they don't realize is that this internal pressure creates distortion. Their smile becomes too symmetrical, their posture becomes too rigid, their voice too polished, and in that uncanny perfection lies the clue. No real emotion is ever that clean. Real emotion is messy. It stutters, it trembles, it breathes heavily and sighs unexpectedly. And when all of that is gone, when everything is refined into something unnatural, you're not witnessing strength. You're witnessing someone who has reached the edge, holding on by turning into a machine. You see, the ones who pretend are not deceiving you to manipulate. They're deceiving to survive. But survival has a cost. Over time, it dulls the senses, numbs the soul, and isolates the self. They lose not just their ability to cry, but their ability to feel. They walk around like ghosts of who they used to be, more invested in looking well than being well. And we, too, play a part in this theater, applauding their composure, mistaking it for resilience. But resilience without expression is erosion. It's a slow self-destruction wrapped in politeness, and yet the deeper truth is this: when a person pretends for too long, they stop knowing what they really feel. They confuse obligation for love, numbness for peace, silence for healing. They become actors in their own lives, reacting to cues rather than emotions. That's the danger of prolonged self-control. It detaches you from yourself, and this disconnection breeds something more dangerous than pain. It breeds indifference, apathy, the point where nothing excites you anymore, and nothing hurts you either. That's not healing, that's death in slow motion. But here's where the shift begins, not in grand interventions, not in dramatic breakdowns, but in quiet awareness. To spot someone slipping behind the veil is to have the power to reach them before they're lost. It requires eyes that pierce illusion. It means asking, not how are you, but what are you avoiding feeling today? It means noticing when their voice tightens on certain subjects, when their stories skip details, when their energy doesn't match their words. These aren't signs of weakness. They are whispers of the truth beneath the performance. And in learning to see others like this, we begin to reclaim something in ourselves, the ability to observe, to study the language of microexpressions, of deflection, of overcompensation, is a form of dominance, not over others, but over delusion. When you can see what others miss, you are no longer at the mercy of appearances. You become immune to the deception of smooth talkers, unshaken by titles, unmoved by masks. You read people the way you read strategies, not by their surface but by their patterns, their inconsistencies, their rehearsed silences. In a world addicted to noise, this kind of observation becomes your edge. And this edge cuts through more than others. It slices into your own self-deceptions too, because the moment you begin to see these signs in others, you begin to recognize them in yourself. You realize how often you say, "I'm fine," when you're not. How often you dress up your exhaustion as productivity. How you've mistaken emotional constipation for mental toughness. But power doesn't live in suppression. It lives in alignment. The most dangerous man is not the one who feels nothing, but the one who knows what he feels and chooses how to use it. So when you see someone smiling too hard, laughing too loud, performing too well, don't be fooled. Don't take their perfection at face value. Ask yourself, what are they hiding behind that excellence? Who are they trying to protect with their silence? And if that person is you, if you find yourself playing that role, understand this. Your mask may impress the world, but it is killing your soul. And eventually, the soul fights back. It whispers in fatigue, it trembles in stillness, it screams through apathy. And now the question becomes, will you wait for collapse to feel again? Or will you master the one skill that separates the powerful from the performed, the skill of seeing what isn't being said? Because the world is a battlefield of facades, and those who dominate are not the loudest. They are the ones who listen with their eyes, speak with precision, and move with a clarity that cuts through illusion. They know the real war is not out there, it is within. And if you can detect that final chilling clue in someone else, the moment they almost seem too okay, you've already stepped into the realm of influence that most never touch. The realm where truth is power. The mask of composure is often the final armor of someone silently collapsing. It is not built overnight, nor is it worn lightly. It's forged over years of subtle trauma, unmet needs, and social conditioning that rewards stoicism and punishes vulnerability. A person doesn't wake up one day and decide to become emotionally invisible. They are shaped into that role through a lifetime of disappointments where truth was used against them, where honesty became ammunition for others' judgment, and where feelings were dismissed as weakness. Eventually, the psyche adapts. It learns to build walls, smooth the tone of voice, steady the eyes, and rehearse answers that sound healthy even when the soul inside is screaming. This mask becomes a survival mechanism, not just a performance. It is the only shield left when nothing else feels safe. And yet, behind that polished exterior is a mind that's unraveling thread by thread, hidden in plain sight. This composure, this chilling stillness in the face of chaos, is often misread as strength. People applaud it. They admire the individual who handles everything so well. But what they fail to see is that this same composure is what people retreat into when they've run out of ways to be real. It is the emotional equivalent of going numb. You appear calm not because you are, but because feeling anything more would break you. It's the look in someone's eyes when they've smiled for too long. When the act becomes so deeply ingrained that even they begin to believe it, they forget what it feels like to speak without filtering. They forget what it's like to cry in front of someone and not be ashamed. They are calm only because collapse would take too much energy. They are composed only because chaos has become too familiar to confront. What's truly chilling is how quiet this kind of suffering is. It doesn't make a scene, it doesn't cry out for help. Instead, it makes eye contact. It shows up on time, it makes polite conversation. It continues to serve others, work hard, and meet expectations. This mask fools not only others, but the wearer too. They begin to believe their own performance. They begin to forget the sound of their own unmet needs. Their world becomes a stage where they are the actor, the director, and the exhausted audience all in one. And yet, if you watch closely, the cracks begin to show. They are not loud, but they are there. In the eyes that dot away for a second too long, in the body that moves with mechanical precision, in the laugh that doesn't quite reach the chest. These are not random behaviors. These are silent cries for someone to notice that the mask is slipping. This armor becomes most dangerous when it hardens into identity. When someone starts to believe that being the strong one is their only role in life, they slowly erase all other parts of themselves. They lose access to grief, to fear, to joy, to intimacy. Because to keep up the illusion of strength, they must suppress anything that feels uncertain. And yet, this suppression doesn't eliminate pain, it incubates it. Buried emotions don't die, they grow sharper in silence. They manifest as fatigue, resentment, emotional detachment, and even physical illness. The person may look fine, may sound convincing, but their body knows the truth. It tightens, it trembles, it withholds breath. It reacts to the inner fracture that the mind refuses to name, and in this state, the mask is not just hiding the pain, it is deepening it. The tragedy is compounded by the fact that this behavior is rewarded. Society prefers the composed. It prefers the easy, the agreeable, the emotionally self-contained. People who don't burden others with their truths are praised as mature and disciplined. And so the mask becomes reinforced. Every time someone hides their true feelings and is met with approval, the lie grows stronger. And yet, deep down, there is a growing sense of alienation. The more someone pretends to be okay, the more distant they feel from their own humanity. They are no longer living, they are managing perception. And this emotional exile, this internal disconnection, is what eventually drives them to the edge, not with loud cries for help, but with quiet resignations. With passive withdrawal, with the final, chilling kind of silence that settles in when a person no longer sees a point in trying to be seen. That is why the mask of composure must not be admired blindly. It must be questioned, observed, understood, because it often represents not stability, but the final defense of someone who is collapsing quietly inside. The more flawless the performance, the closer they are to surrender. And the cruel irony is that by the time others notice, it's often too late. The person has already made peace with disappearing, not because they wanted to be invisible, but because they got tired of wearing a smile no one ever looked behind. True power lies in discerning emotional signals others are trained to ignore. In a world fixated on verbal expression, appearance, and surface-level interaction, the majority of people are conditioned to respond only to what is loud, dramatic, or obvious. They miss the quiet language of distress, the subtle shift in tone, the unspoken ache behind a too quick "I'm fine." And this blindness is not accidental, it is taught. From an early age, people are encouraged to trust what is seen, what is spoken, and what conforms to social expectations. Emotional signals that deviate from this script, such as long silences, forced smiles, or oddly timed laughter, are dismissed as moodiness or personality quirks rather than understood as signs of inner imbalance. But those who rise above the noise, those who dominate rooms not by shouting but by perceiving, those individuals have mastered something far rarer than charisma, the art of emotional detection. This form of power doesn't come from reacting, it comes from observing. While the average person listens to words, the perceptive mind listens to the gaps between those words. It sees how the eyes flicker when certain topics arise. It notes the way someone touches their face when they feel exposed, the way they adjust their posture when confronted, the tremble in their voice that betrays a deeper fear. These are not coincidences, they are signals. Signals that reveal more about a person's internal state than anything they say aloud. And once you begin to tune into these layers, you become immune to deception. The polished story no longer sways you. The pleasant tone no longer fools you. You see through people, not just around them. This sensitivity to emotional nuance becomes a strategic advantage. It allows you to know what someone is feeling before they know it. You can sense when someone is suppressing anger, when they're unsure, when they're performing confidence rather than embodying it. In negotiations, in relationships, in leadership, this ability rewrites the entire power dynamic. Because when you see what others ignore, you cannot be misled. You recognize that a smile can be a disguise, that a laugh can be a shield, and that a calm voice can be the final breath before emotional collapse. You begin to trust behaviors that others overlook. A hesitation becomes more telling than an entire explanation. A pause before answering reveals more truth than 1,000 rehearsed lines. But to reach this level of awareness, you must unlearn what society taught you about emotion. You must stop expecting people to be obvious when they're hurting. Pain doesn't always scream, it often whispers. It shows up in repetition, in avoidance, in excessive cheerfulness that feels strained. And the world has trained most people to see composure as control, when in reality, it is often the last effort to keep from falling apart. This is why those who possess true psychological power are not those who dominate others outwardly. They are those who can read the collapse before it happens, and either exploit it or prevent it, depending on their intention. What makes this power unsettling is that it places you outside the common social rhythm. Most people interact on autopilot. They say what's expected, respond with socially acceptable emotions, and never question the deeper currents beneath the exchange. But when you can see beyond this, you become a mirror people don't want to face. You notice when their energy drops. You sense when they're retreating behind words. You detect when their humor is covering shame, when their silence is hiding rage. And once people realize they can't hide from your perception, they either gravitate toward your honesty or retreat from the discomfort of being seen too clearly. This emotional radar is not about empathy alone. It is also about strategic clarity. Because power is not just about influencing others, it's about predicting them, understanding their internal triggers, knowing how they will respond under stress, under fear, under pressure. When you're attuned to their subtle emotional signals, you can forecast behaviors long before they become visible. You can prepare, redirect, neutralize, or leverage, depending on what the moment requires. And that, in the purest sense, is psychological control. To access this power, however, requires silence within yourself. You cannot perceive another clearly if your own emotions are loud and unregulated. The mind must be still. Your presence must be undisturbed. You must be able to watch without reacting, to listen without projecting, to observe without interrupting. This is why emotional discernment is so rare. It demands inner discipline. Not to suppress your emotions, but to control your response to them, so that when someone lies, you don't flinch. When someone masks their suffering, you don't pity. You study. You trace the roots of their behavior without needing them to explain. Because you already understand, you've seen it before, you've trained your perception not just through observation, but through reflection. And in this level of clarity, you are no longer manipulated by surface charm or controlled by appearances. You carry your power in stillness, in subtlety, in sight. Not everyone will recognize it, and that's precisely the point. The most dangerous eyes are the ones that seem comic, because they're already reading the room, the mood, the motive. And when you possess that kind of awareness, you're not just ahead of people. You are beneath their defenses, inside their blind spots, standing quietly in the space between their mask and their truth. People reveal the truth not in their words, but in the subtle misalignments of their controlled behavior. The irony of deception is that the more one tries to manage perception, the more signals they unconsciously give away. Human behavior is a layered script. What is said aloud is only the surface, often carefully rehearsed and socially calibrated. But underneath that verbal, the body speaks in unfiltered dialects. Tension in the jaw, the direction of the eyes, the rhythm of the breath, the twitch of a finger held too long in stillness. These minor inconsistencies, often dismissed by the casual observer, are the telltale cracks in the mask. They are involuntary expressions of what someone does not want to admit, sometimes even to themselves. And those who are perceptive enough to notice these behavioral glitches possess a kind of psychological X-ray vision, reading what others fail to conceal beneath layers of composure and charm. The most common error people make when trying to detect truth is placing too much trust in spoken language. Words are malleable, adaptable, and easily manipulated. People lie through compliments, hide pain with laughter, and express contentment in tones that are too polished to be real. But the body is far less cooperative. It remembers, it reacts. It resists the lie even when the mind insists on it. A forced smile may stretch the lips, but it won't lift the cheeks with genuine joy. A confident voice may project certainty, but if the hands are clenched too tightly or the shoulders are unnaturally squared, it signals inner tension. These are not random gestures. They are the unconscious protests of a truth being buried alive. Watch someone long enough, and the performance begins to fracture, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle, predictable patterns. They might pause a moment too long before answering an emotionally charged question. They might repeat themselves, over-clarify, or offer details no one asked for, an attempt to control narrative by oversaturating it. Their tone may flatten when the conversation brushes against something raw. Or their eyes may glaze, not from disinterest, but from retreat, mentally stepping away from a moment that reveals too much. These are not the signs of someone lying to manipulate. Often, they're signs of someone lying to protect, to shield themselves from vulnerability, and it is precisely that shield that reveals more than it hides. Control is not inherently deceitful, but extreme control is unnatural. No one is naturally flawless in their movements, their tone, or their emotional responses. When everything looks too rehearsed, when every word is polished, every smile symmetrical, every reply neutral, it's not a display of mastery, it's a signal of suppression, because authenticity lives in the unpredictable. It stumbles in speech, pauses in thought, allows the face to crumple when emotions overwhelm. When those elements are absent, what's left is not strength. It is the residue of someone who has spent too long hiding from their own reflection. And in that perfection, you can trace the outline of the lie. The key to decoding these misalignments lies in pattern recognition. No single behavior means much in isolation. A stutter could mean nervousness or excitement. Averted eyes might suggest shame, distraction, or modesty. But when you notice patterns, when the body says no, as the mouth says yes, or when energy drops after a certain topic arises repeatedly, that's when the map becomes readable. It's in the tension between expressions, not the expressions themselves, where truth hides. That is where the story escapes, like smoke slipping through cracks in a tightly sealed door. Those who master this form of perception operate on a different psychological level. They don't just interact, they interpret. They don't just hear, they analyze. They can detect incongruence before the speaker is even aware of it, and this awareness grants them power, not just over others, but over environments, relationships, and decisions. They are less likely to be blindsided, misled, or manipulated because they've trained themselves to detect dishonesty not in intentions, but in behavior. They understand that even the best liar cannot synchronize every layer of their performance. Sooner or later, the inner truth leaks through the seams of control. A breath held too long, a posture too rigid, a laugh too forced. These are not random errors. They are confessions in motion, and yet, this ability requires more than observation. It requires restraint. When you notice these signs, you must not react immediately. You must collect them, stack them, trace the pattern over time, because calling it out too early causes defense. But when you let people believe they are hidden, they reveal even more. You give them space to unravel in front of you, thinking their mask is still intact. And when the mask finally falls, not with drama, but in a subtle moment of exhaustion, you'll already have seen the truth in advance. You won't be shocked, you'll just confirm what their body has been saying all along.